Hey friends, welcome back to my channel. This is my favorite time of year apart from Christmas time. I love a fresh start. I love the beginning of a new school year. And this is the perfect time to hit the reset button on several areas of my life. And I just thought I would share some of those with you today. The first would be food storage. If you're new here, we are a family of 10. We have 8 children. We live in the Midlands of South Carolina, and we're pretty big on food storage and preparedness. Even though we don't live super close to the coast, we still experience the remnants of hurricanes on a yearly basis, sometimes multiple times in a year. And of course, we all experience shortages of some kind in 2020. I didn't find toilet paper in stores for over 3 months, but we were fine because we were prepared. This is the time of year when I like to make sure I have a good up-to-date inventory of our food storage. Everything from what we have in 5-gallon buckets, in our pantry, in the cabinets in our kitchen, and in our freezers. We have a large garden. My husband and sons hunt. We have chickens, and we plan on doing meat chickens this year as well. One thing I noticed a few weeks ago when I was planning my freezer cooking that I did last weekend was that we had 0 space left in 3 freezer spaces. Now we have our freezer that's under our French door fridge, and we have 2 upright freezers in our laundry room. One of those freezers we bought last year when my husband and sons had a tremendously successful weekend hunting Thanksgiving weekend, and we needed a new freezer to store the over 200 pounds of venison that they brought home from the processor. Shockingly, we've hardly put a dent in the meat in that freezer, which has been very encouraging to see. We don't really eat a whole lot of red meat. When we do eat meat, we don't eat it in large quantities. I would say maybe once a month we'll have burgers, but other than that, we're just adding a pound or 2 to an entire meal, even for our family of 10. So I took a weekend to pressure can a whole bunch of chicken and put on the shelf in the pantry. And that freed up one whole shelf to put freezer meals that I did on our freezer cooking day. I will link that video below. It feels great to have those meals in there. And when we got home from the beach a few days ago, I had actually completely forgotten that we even did that freezer cooking because I did it the day before we left and things were just really crazy. And it was so refreshing to come home, open the freezer, and realize, oh my word, I have like 19 freezer meals in here that I completely forgot about. So I told my children for the next 2 months, I'm not purchasing a single thing that needs to go in the freezer. Hunting season will be just around the corner. We're going to be doing those meat birds later this year. There's literally nowhere to put any extra meat, any more frozen vegetables or fruit. So it's time to start working through some of that in preparation of putting more in. I'm also using this time as I look at my inventory for our food storage to make sure that we have simplified our meal plan, simplified the things that we're making on a regular basis, make sure I'm rotating through all of our rices, beans, pasta, different flours that we have. Food storage is fantastic, but only if you're actually using it and rotating through it on a daily basis and making sure that you're keeping an eye on expiration dates. The next area in need of a reset in my house is household preparedness. So as I mentioned before, we are usually hit with the remnants of some of the stronger hurricanes that we see off the Gulf and the East Coast every year. I believe it was Hurricane Matthew. We lost power for 3 or 4 days. Back in 2014, we had the big ice storm in Georgia and South Carolina, and we lost power for an entire week. We didn't have a fireplace or anything in that house that we lived in back then. I was pregnant with our 7th child, and it was challenging, to say the least. Now, we knew the storm was coming. We didn't know how bad it was going to be, so we did prepare. And this was actually back before we had even gotten into preparedness. It was those years of struggle and different extreme storms that really got us thinking we need to be more prepared, especially as our family got larger. So this is the time of year that I'm checking inventory on candles, matches. We like to use oil lamps, so I make sure we have extra oil and wicks for those lamps. We have firewood, charcoal for our grill, fuel for the generator, and even making sure that you have pantry meals that are somewhat ready to serve. Things that don't take much beyond warming up in a Dutch oven over a fire if necessary, or maybe just pouring some boiling water in a pot for something like soup or oatmeal. Make sure you have a list somewhere of meals for breakfast, lunch, and dinner that don't take a whole lot of preparation or rely solely on electricity. I would have a hard time making bread without electricity, but I could pretty easily make tortillas. So keep those kind of things in mind and make sure you have them written down somewhere, because when you're stressed and in a pinch and your whole family's hungry and you haven't thought it through, that would be the best time to have it written down somewhere rather than trying to rack your brain in a stressful situation. Another area that's important to be organized is documents. Of course, we live in a digital era, but I am a paper and pencil girl at heart. I still love having paper copies of things, and there are certain documents that you really have to have a hard copy of, such as your Social Security card, birth certificate. It's important to keep cash on hand. I believe the recommended amount for every household is $1,000 to $2,000 in cash in a safe somewhere in your home in case you weren't able to get to the bank or everything went offline for a period of time. I personally have had a hard time over the years keeping track of birth certificates and Social Security cards for all 10 of us in our family. At least once a year, I am scrambling to locate someone's birth certificate or Social Security card. And I have finally gathered all of them up in one place, and we placed them in a fireproof safe. And now I know where they are. Don't forget to include passports in that. Another thing I'll be checking up on this month is our household management binder. When we built our house 3 years ago, I started this binder knowing that I wanted us to be good, responsible homeowners and good stewards of what we'd been blessed with. And so this household binder contains everything from information like contact phone numbers for our heating and air company, someone that can come clean the chimney once a year, when that needs to be done, what month it makes most sense to pressure wash the house, to order mulch, to start seeds for the spring garden or the fall garden, when our first and last average frost date is. If you have a trusted and reliable electrician or plumber, all of those things would go in our household binder. Now, just because it's in there does not mean we stay on top of getting it all done. So I try to glance at it at least once a month so that I know what we should be adding to our Saturday to-do list every week throughout each month throughout the year. In the month of August, we are doing things like tearing out the garden and preparing our fall crops. Right now, our greenhouse is completely bare. And when I say bare, I don't mean empty. Like the greenhouse plastic dry rotted from the sun because of the position that it's in on our land. And we had a lot of wind last week, and it is now down to like a skeletal situation. There's absolutely no plastic left on our greenhouse. My husband just ordered some more. And so that's going to be a huge project for August because we plan to use the greenhouse to grow quite a lot of crops through the winter, utilizing containers. The last thing that I want to hit the reset button on in my house is housework. As a large family, homeschoolers, and a business owner, it does not take much for our house to get out of control. Everything from laundry to dishes to deep cleaning items. But the thing is, many hands make light work. My 2 oldest are in college, my middle 4 are homeschooled, and my youngest 2 go to school. So there are 5 of us at home most days every week. If we can take 10 to 15 minutes every day to be intentional about getting some chores done, our house stays really clean. And when a house is tidy, it's a lot easier to maintain the cleanliness. I am very much a minimalist at heart, but it's a little more difficult to maintain that with 10 people in a house. So a couple of times a year, I take about a month to go room by room and make sure that we have purged, taken things to Goodwill, donated items, passed them down to other family members or neighbors. And it just allows us to make the best use of the space that we have. Because believe it or not, even as a family of 10, we do not have a really large house. It is very efficient and it's exactly what we need. In order to get this housework done, I will typically about once a year, because our needs change as our household changes, the busyness of different seasons in our life. So I'll get a piece of notebook paper and I will write down every possible thing that I would want to get cleaned or done throughout a month. And I'll write it all down and I break it into very manageable parts. So I might write down the lower cabinets in the kitchen. And when I say that, I mean like wiping the cabinet fronts, or all the downstairs windows, or wash the dog bed. I'll write down everything I can think of, and then I write next to it an M for monthly, a W for weekly, or a BW for bi-weekly. That would be how often that I would like for those things to get done. Next to that, I will write down about how long I think it takes to do that particular task. For example, the lower cabinets in the kitchen would take definitely less than 10 minutes with a rag and a spray bottle and maybe a toothbrush, or a magic eraser. And I will separate those items onto note cards and I'll put them in a stack with maybe a binder clip. And ideally, a couple of times a week, my 4 kids that are at home and myself will grab a card or two and get a bunch of chores done in 10 or 15 minutes. And it's amazing the difference that makes when we start doing it on a consistent basis. Even if you don't have children or your children are grown, you still get that feeling this time of year as school supplies are out and parents are shopping and you start to see school buses. There is still that feeling of a fresh start, a new school year. I'd love to hear if you kind of do a similar thing this time of year as far as hitting the reset button, getting things back in order in your house, in your life. I love it. I love organization, I love efficiency, and I love saving time so that I can carve out time for myself, time for my family, and set healthy boundaries for things like work. I hope you found a little bit of motivation and inspiration in this. I love having you here, and I love hearing from you in the comments. Thanks for watching.